everybody. My name is Cassandra Williams, Coach Williams of Cassandra Williams Enterprise, and I am your victory coach. And we are here for the morning tea. During this teaching, I hope something will be said that you will feel equipped. Will feel empowered. You will feel encouraged. You will feel educated enough to act. That you will be moved to application, that place of action, that place of reflection, so that you can build the life that you've always dreamed of and live in it. I don't just want you to attain it, I want you to be able to maintain it as well. Okay. So, to my replay viewers, thank you so much. Whether you got here by a tag, a share, or an invite, thank you so much for watching until its entirety this morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you are watching this video, because I don't take it lightly that you saw fit to come into this one. There's a lot of people out here on these social media streets, so thank you for choosing to come in and find value in what I'm saying and what God has given me to say to you. So we're talking about relationships 2.0, right? Because we did relationships 101 a while back, but now we're talking about 2.0. We're taking it to the next level. And so yesterday we were talking about who joined you. The scripture yesterday, we were talking about the scripture where it says, whom God has joined together, let no man put asunder. And so we were really asking, who joined you? Who knitted you together, as these two people, these two things are becoming one, and that could even be as a church, that could be on your job. Who joined you? Who put you together with that group? And is it a season or a time for change, right? Because we can't stay in the same place doing the same things, even in marriage, y'all. When we are, the two shall become one. But you know what? We're constantly evolving, we're constantly growing, right? And so today, um, we're going to be talking about the honeymoon phase. Um, in any relationship, on a job, in a friendship, in a marriage, when you join a church, any relationship you have, there's this thing called a honeymoon phase. And that's where everybody's putting their best foot forward. Everybody's trying to say all the right things, do all the right things. But then there comes a time where you're kind of there and it's like, yeah, I'm here. And then the real you starts to show up, not the representative, not that, that pretend, hey girl, how you doing? No, the real, listen, I ain't feeling it today. The real you shows up. Well, there comes a period, even in your Christian walk, where the honeymoon is over because God woos us, y'all. You pray, he answers. You ask for something, it's like, here you go. But there comes a time where he tests you. And we don't like that all the time. And we were like, well, God, what happened? I was just, we feel like Job, God, I was just living upright. I was doing everything you said. He said, but in Deuteronomy 8:2, he says, remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart. Because the testing comes to show authenticity. The testing comes to show what's really in there. Because if you really want to know how people feel about you, let them get mad. If you really want to know how somebody feels about you, let the trials of life show up. If you really want to know how someone feels about you, let tribulation hit. And the true colors will show up. Because over the test of time, you can only live a lie for so long. And some people are masters of hiding who they really are. And that's why sometimes it's like you'll meet someone, they'll sweep you off your feet, and then you get married, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, who is this person? Because once you're married, they're like, oh, I got you now. I can let the real me it's not like someone sets out to get into it's one of those things where it's like I like it unto nobody wants to get into an abusive relationship. I just don't believe that. I don't believe that any woman or any man seeks to get into that type of relationship. But when they meet them, they sweep them off their feet. They're the nicest person you'll ever meet. They, yeah, there are red flags, and we ignore the red flags, and we can kind of see it a little bit, but nah, he's not going to do that to me, right? But God says that there's a testing period because over time, little things start to show up. You know, as time goes on, this thing shows up and you be sitting there looking like, where'd that come from? It was always in there, right? And so God tests us. He does test us. When he told Job, he said, have you considered my servant Job? That was a test. Job didn't ask for that. Job didn't want that. But it was, the honeymoon was over. It was time for Job to pay up. God had blessed him. God had put a hedge of protection around him. God was telling everybody how good he was. You couldn't say nothing about his God, right? But what happens when we're tested? What happens when God allows certain things to happen in your life? Do you turn on him like you turn on your brothers and sisters? Do you turn on him like you turn on your spouse? Do you turn on him like you turn on your children? Do you turn on him like you turn on the pastor or the people in your church? As long as things are good, we're good. But when things are bad, when the vow is tested, when it's time to pay up, when the honeymoon is over and we're not blessed and we're not woo 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 and everything is not good, then what? When God comes and taps you on the shoulder, and like he did with Hosea, and he said, Hosea, in Hosea, he said, I want you to go marry the prostitute. Excuse me. This is the prophet, the man of God. And he said, I need you to go marry the prostitute and have kids with her. God. Now, some of us would have been like, God, that ain't you. Let's be honest. Let's be real. We've been like, God, that's not you. But God told him to go and marry a prostitute. And I want you to sit in that for a minute. Has God asked you to do some things that did not make sense? Has he asked you to do some things that you were like, are you sure? Did he ask you to marry somebody and you sitting there looking like, I didn't sign up for this? Have he sent you to a place, a church, a job, position, put you in a friendship and you're like, they crazy. This is not what I signed up for. God, I know you didn't call me to this. And God is saying, yeah, I did. When it's time to pay up, when the honeymoon is over and it's time to pay up, do you run? Do you shake your head? Do you just go sit down somewhere and pout like a 3-year-old? Or do you stand for God? Do you allow God to use you? Because we say, use me, Lord. But when it's time to pay up, when it's time to keep your solemn promise, when it's time to do the hard things, are you a wimp? Because God does not, no one who is tested, remember we're talking about that testing, when God tests us, no one who is tested should say, God is tempting me. This is because God is not tempted by any form of evil, nor does he tempt anyone. So God may test you, but he to see what's in your heart, but he's not going to tempt you. You are tempted by your own desires. You are tempted by your own sin. You're tempted by what's revealed in your heart during the testing. Because sometimes we fail the test. I failed the test. I've been like, God, listen. I went to the teacher and I said, I don't know. No, I failed this one. I know I'm gonna have a retest. Give me a retest. Have some grace and give me a retest, right? Because my own desires, my own sin, my own wants lead me astray, lead me into temptation. But God is so gracious that even when we're tempted, He says, I'll provide a way of escape for you. So it's not, if you stay in particular situations, it's by choice. It's your choice. God says, I'm not tempting you. But if you fall into temptation, I'll provide a way of escape. Anytime you've ever really, I want you to really think about today. I want you to really think about some situations in your life and be honest that some situations you stayed in too long because of choice. You got there and you was like, oh, I like it here. And God was like, you are not meant to stay. I was the type that when I was being tested, I brought in the TV and the comfy couch and I set up residence. And God was like, this is not where you're supposed to stay. You're supposed to go through this place. You're supposed to go through this thing. And he was, but I brought in the couch and the chair and was inviting friends over and we was having a good old time in mess, in a mess. And that's not. So when the vow gets tested, when it's time to pay up, when the honeymoon phase is over and it's time to go back to work, because after we get married, there's this honeymoon period, right? Where, oh my God, we just love each other and we're so happy to be married, and we go on the honeymoon and then we come back to real life and we got to go back to work and we got to pay bills, and now he's living in the house with you or she's living in the house with you, and now you looking at them like, I didn't know you snore like that. Why you leaving your towel on the floor? Why you gotta chew like that? Why you eat like that? Ain't nobody washing all them dishes like that. Ain't nobody going around and I'm not washing clothes every day. No, and I don't want to live right here. And why we gotta do this? And the honeymoon. Good morning, Anita. The honeymoon is over. Good morning, mommy. Thanks for coming in. The honeymoon is. Then kids come in and they running around and they want them to sit down and you're like, let them play. They just kids. And he's like, make them sit down. And the honeymoon is over. And you find yourself sitting there looking at God going, you called me to this. What am I supposed to do with this? And the honeymoon can last 10, 15, 20 years. And then you wake up one day and you look over and say, who, who is this man? Who is this woman in my bed? Because you don't even recognize them anymore. They're not the person that you married. They're not the person. And sometimes, y'all, we are called, and I'm going to talk to my ladies. Sometimes you marry a boy king. Sometimes you marry a man that his purpose is hidden way down deep inside of there. Everybody does. Sometimes it's a diamond in the rough. Sometimes you're gonna have to, allow God is gonna have to apply that pressure, and that good thing is gonna rise up and and he's gonna grow into the man he's supposed to be. But he's gonna have to go through some processing, ladies. I just want you to understand, sometimes it doesn't come to you the way it's going to end up. But can I encourage you to trust God? Can I encourage you today to trust the process? That even when the honeymoon is over, that does not mean God can't rekindle, God can't restore, God can't breathe life on it and revive it, but you've got to allow Him to do what He needs to do. When you phase over from one phase of life into another phase of life, all I know is to work and put my hands to the plow. But now I'm retired. What, ladies, what do you do with that? Because now they're sitting there looking at you and they don't know what to do with themselves. And they're fussing and they're mean and they're nasty. And you're like, listen, you can go somewhere. I don't care where you go. Just get out of here. Right? But it's a new season in their life. And you've got to help them cultivate. What does this next half of your life look like? Now you have the time. What is that thing that God has called you to do? It's not always for us to support our husbands. Sometimes we've got to support, them to support us. Sometimes we got to support them. Sometimes we got to help them become the best versions of themselves that they can be. Well, what if they don't want to? Maybe they don't know how to. Maybe they've never had anybody support them. Maybe they've never had anybody push them to be greater. Maybe they've never had anybody to cultivate and really ask them, what do you really want to do with your life? I remember when I met my husband, he had lots of jobs. Um, and I asked him one day, I said, well, what do you really want to do? Well, that was when computers were really coming out and everybody was a computer repair person or computer programming. So, of course, he said, oh, I want to do something with computers. And I'm like, okay. But I realized when I got him in the car, that was his peaceful place. That whenever we would get in the car and he would drive, that's his happy place. And I said, have you ever thought about being a truck driver? But he thought he couldn't do it. And so it took me a few years to keep putting that seed in the ground. Keep planting that seed, keep watering the seed, keep, digging around the seed, keep, putting more water on it, put some manure on it to keep cultivating and taking care of the seed. But that seed took root. And he was like, one day he was like, you know what? I do want to drive trucks. And that's his happy place. But what if I was like, you don't want to do this, this, and this. I said, you have to do this and this and this and this. I did my research. He didn't research. I went and researched. What would it take for him to do these things that he would say he wanted to do? And I was like, nah, that ain't gonna work for you. It's not. Because I knew who I married. You have to know them. You have to know who you married. You have to know the personality of the person that you marry. You have to know the ins and outs. And sometimes y'all we be like, well, they just done changed. Why? Ask God. God will show you. God will teach you. Okay. So that was a free one, y'all. When the honeymoon is over, when the honeymoon is over and it's time to pay up. When God taps you and said, I want you to marry a prostitute, have children with her, people ain't going to understand what you're doing, but I need you to do it anyway. Because God wanted to show them the same love that Hosea had for Gomer, and how every time that she sinned and she went out there in the world, God wanted to show us that, you know what, I love you that much. That when you sin and you go out there and you do what you big and bad enough to do, I want to be able to go out there. I'll go and I'll come get you. I'll love you. I'll bring you back into myself. Can we say the same thing? Do we have that same love? That when it's not comfortable, when they're not doing everything we want them to do, when we don't understand the season that they're in. Y'all, can I tell you that this COVID-19 and this period of time that we're living in right now, that this is a new season for some people? It's pushing them into places that they didn't think they would be in. And instead of standing in judgment, instead of leaving, pray and ask God to show you how to nurture those things that needs to be nurtured. Pray and ask God to show you how to cultivate those things that need to be cultivated. Pray and ask God to show you how to plant a seed that needs to be planted, because one plants, another waters, but it's God that gives the increase. I'm talking about when the honeymoon is over. When the honeymoon is over, when it's time to pay up, when it's time to live those vows, when it's time to do the unthinkable, when he stands in your face or she stands in your face and she says, I don't want you no more. What do you do? What do you do when your spouse is like the wife in Job and said, curse God and die? What do you do with that? Do you pass the test? Because see, the test wasn't about her. The test wasn't about his friends. The test wasn't about the community. The test was about, have you considered my servant Job? Have you considered my servant Elvira? Have you considered my servant Anita? Have you considered my servant, and insert your name? When the honeymoon is over, what do you do in the midst of the test? Think about that. What do you do in the midst of the test? Do you get frustrated and just throw the test back? I was in classes where people got frustrated. They was like, I don't know none of this. And they just took the test back and gave it back to the teacher. And they was like, I ain't even going to waste your time. I'm going to go ahead and leave. When the honeymoon is over. And like we talked about yesterday, sometimes we get in situations and we chose that. We did that. We saw it, we wanted it, we had to have it. I had a relationship that I got into, and but when I prayed and I asked God, God, can I date this person? God said no. And I said, but God, I want him. I was like, no. He's like, no. I said, are you sure, Lord? He said, why I gotta be by myself? He was like, you don't want that. And I said, but yeah, I do. A mess. You hear me? A whole mess. And I did what I wanted to do, and God was like, yeah, go ahead. And I was like the children of Israel wandering around in the wilderness. And I was like, okay, I don't want it no more. And he said, no, you're gonna stay in that, because I need you not to do that no more. I need you not to go that route anymore. That's why if you work with me, you'll hear me say, let me know how that worked out for you. Because guess what? I did it. I know it don't work. I know it does not work when you go against the will of God for your life. If you ask God, he will tell you, don't do that. You don't, because he knows them. He knows the intent and he knows their heart. He knows those, he know, he know. Trust him. So when it's time to pay up and the honeymoon is over, what do you do? Because sometimes, y'all, it's as simple as we got to pray for thick skin. It's not always a time to leave, but we do have to have thick skin. So as they're getting broken, the other person is being broken and being made and molded and reshaped by God, and the fire is coming, that we can stand in the midst of it and it doesn't hurt as much. that we're not able to take it personal and make it about us, and that we forget that there's a whole nother person. The two shall become one. Do you still, I want to ask some of my married ladies, do you still have compassion for your spouse? When he hurts, you hurt. When he bleeds, you bleed. When God is testing him, that you feel concerned. Do you still have that? Because sometimes it's all about us. And on the flip side of that, men, are you concerned about your wife? Do you know those things that prick her heart and make her sad? Do you still study her like you used to before you got married, before while you were dating? Do you care on that level? When the honeymoon phase is over, when the vow gets tested, what do you do? How do you respond? Do you like the way that you are responding? That's a question you have to ask yourself. Because there have been seasons in my life I didn't like the way I responded. I didn't handle it well. And I had to be like, you know what? Let me take a step back and let me work on this girl right here, because this ain't right. This is not godly. I'm not. Nah. That was all Cassandra right there. And Cassandra don't always handle things the right way. Okay? Let me be honest with you. I can be that girl. I can go all the way left. Okay. Um, so when it's time to pay up, when God has a conversation and say, have you considered my servant? And you get put in a situation that is undesirable. Or when he taps you on the shoulder and he says, I need you to go marry, or I need you to get in a relationship, or I need you to do, and he calls you to the floor and says, your number is up. I have need of thee. Will you do what he's asking you to do? Good morning, King 704. Thank you for coming in. Will you do what he's asking you to do? You know how crazy it looks for everybody knew Gomer was a prostitute. And here Hosea is marrying this woman, and she goes out and she cheats on him, and he has to go back out and he has to get her. Do you know he's the talk of the town? What do you do when God puts you on display and he makes an example out of you when the honeymoon is over? So I love you guys to life. I'm going to let you guys go this morning. Thank you for coming in for this morning tea. Your homework today is to really think about, how do you handle when the honeymoon is over? When things aren't going the way that you want them to go, what is your gut response? What is your knee-jerk response? That first thing that you do. And I want you to say, is that godly or not? Because if it's not a response of God, then we need to really look at, okay, we've got to look at you as well. Okay. So my name is Cassandra Williams of Cassandra Williams Enterprise. And I'm your victory coach. You can connect with me at www.thecassandrawilliams.com. Um, if you are interested in when the vow is tested, it's going to be a 5-week summer series that we're going to take this conversation a little deeper. I have 5 ladies that are going to come out, and they are going to talk to us about, and I am one of the 5, y'all. So those of you that have not gotten to come in behind closed doors with me, this will be the perfect time for you to come in. We are going to come in. We're going to talk about real life situations when the vow is tested. We are going to talk from the standpoint of marriage vows. Um, What happens when those vows get tested, when it's time to live them out, to walk them out? It was cute when you stood up there in your pretty white dress, or you stood before the judge and you promised to love, honor, and cherish, enrich her for poor, in sickness and health, and in health, and to death do you part. But what happens when it's time to pay up? What happens when they get sick? What happens when they promise to love, honor, and cherish and they left? What happened when they promised you forever and they cheated and they lied and they did all of this stuff and you had to leave? What happens? How do you overcome that? So these ladies have been through the fire, they've been tested, they've been proven, and they're going to come and they're going to give you their testimony, tips, and tools that you can use on this journey. Okay. So bit.ly vow test, and that begins on August the 3rd through the 31st. It's every Monday in August. So I hope you'll be able to join us, okay? So pass it on to a friend, a coworker, a church member, everybody. Everybody's welcome, okay? So love you guys to life. Have an amazing day, and I will see you on tomorrow for another edition of the morning tea. What do you do when the honeymoon is over? Be blessed, everybody.